What is up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. And, of course, if you are watching on our YouTube channel, that's Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, joining me as he always does. It's our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And, AJ, I know the summer isn't filled with necessarily a ton of breaking news. I mean, obviously, on the football commitment side, it's been pretty rampant over the last month. But we do have some news to talk about that came out earlier on Wednesday morning regarding North Carolina basketball and more so the ACC and SEC as a whole, as the times, games, and dates for the 2023 ACC SEC Men's Basketball Challenge have been released and announced. Carolina will play on Wednesday, November 29th at home against Tennessee, 7:15 p.m. tip-off for the Tar Heels. But AJ, I don't want to focus just on Carolina in this, and we'll obviously talk about Carolina more, but I kind of want to run through the games as a whole. So we can kind of talk about the Tuesday games first. I'll pop a little graphic up on the screen as well so people can see them when I list them as well. But I'll go ahead and run through those games real quickly, and then we'll focus on Carolina and the Wednesday games a little bit more later on. But
and by the way, I just realized I tweeted out 9:15, not 7:15. Oops.
You're probably so used to it being 9:15 because it seems like Carolina always gets the late tip-off.
So while you're doing that, this is live radio essentially, right? I'm going to go in here and fix it and make sure that, because some guy's going to let us know.
It's probably already happened, to be honest with you. They're quick on Twitter. I'll put it that way. So yeah, while you fix that, AJ, I'm going to go ahead and run through these Tuesday games. And I know you've got the list in front of you as well, so you don't necessarily need to listen to everything I say right here, but focusing on it, LSU at Syracuse, first game, 7 p.m. on Tuesday. Missouri at Pittsburgh, 7 p.m. You got Mississippi State at Georgia Tech on 7 p.m. Notre Dame at South Carolina is the final 7 p.m. tip-off of Tuesday. And then you've got Miami at Kentucky at 7:30. That's a really interesting matchup. NC State at Ole Miss at 9 p.m. And then Clemson playing at Alabama at 9:30. A little bit surprised Alabama ended up with Clemson when you look at kind of where they're at as a program especially last year, but right now as a whole, a little bit surprised they maybe didn't get a little bit tougher of a matchup. I kind of expected maybe Duke was going to play them, to be completely honest with you, but that obviously was not the case. So
I'd heard something else. We'll go into that in a second.
Yeah, but talk to me about these Tuesday games and the matchup and, the first ever edition of the ACC SEC.
You're going to have to go over again because I was correcting my crappy tweet. So very quickly, let's go over one by one real fast. We'll do a little snapshot on each one, and then we'll dive into the heels.
LSU at Syracuse is the first tip-off of Tuesday. Thoughts on that game?
That's cool. All these are cool for one thing because we haven't seen them for a while.
Yeah.
The ACC Big Ten Challenge had gotten stale.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to the point where it's the same teams playing each other because it wasn't like Carolina was ever going to go to Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like Minnesota was ever going to come to Chapel Hill. There's a select few that you play, and that's pretty much it. And I imagine same thing will happen here with the SEC Challenge, but it'll take a while. So all of this is exciting. I think it's cool that LSU goes up there. I like matchups like all these kinds of matchups because it's good for the sport. And in a sport in which we need as much evidence as possible, as much intel as possible about how these teams are, then you got to have really good non-conference matchups.
Yeah. Which
is why I think football should have a ton more than they actually do, especially when you don't have a massive tournament at the end that determines a champion. In football, it's a lot more subjective just to get to that point. So I think the more games that you have, again, with really big-time matchups, the better. Mm-hmm. I like the LSU and Syracuse matchup because if nothing else, it's going to look smooth seeing LSU on the floor in the Carrier Dome.
Yeah, no longer called the Carrier. What do they call it now? JUL Wireless or something like that?
Yeah, some wireless.
Something like that.
JMA Wireless.
Yeah, I think that's it. That's it. I don't know what JMA
I know that when I covered the game, when I was up there last January, it was, I guess, covering a game up there. I kept having to look down and type that in and JMA.
Yeah, try to reference because it's so used to be in the Carrier.
Oh, and the funny thing about it was that the Wi-Fi just sucked.
Still, even with the new wireless.
It's JMA Wireless Dome and the Wi-Fi just sucked.
Hey, welcome to as you would say, welcome to the world of journalism where Wi-Fi usually sucks more often than not. I give credit to Carolina. Their Wi-Fi is actually pretty dang good, so I'll give them credit for that. But other places around the ACC and country cannot say the same. Missouri at Pittsburgh, the next game, 7 p.m. tip-off. Pretty, interesting. I think those two teams and those two programs kind of make sense with them playing.
It does. And it's a game that probably otherwise would never happen. So I think it's really good for Pitt to see it. Capel needs to double up. He needs to back up last season with a really good season because he was absolutely on the hot seat going into last year. A lot of people were surprised he didn't get fired after the prior season. So this is one of those games because you have limited opportunities to build your resume early. And we talked in a podcast about the net. The ACC needs to win these games because I tell Carolina fans, when you root against the league, it hurts the Tar Heels. No matter who you're a fan of, you should want the league to win because it benefits you. So Pitt needs to win a game like this. When you're at home, you got to protect your court. You've got to win a game, even if it's not going to be a Q1 game, but you still got to win it because a loss would be devastating, especially if Missouri struggles in the SEC. So it's all of these are big games for the league. And I don't know how interesting that game will be. I think for me, the most interesting aspect of that is how does Pitt start the season? Mm-hmm. What kind of team does Capel have after having a great year this past season?
Agreed. Definitely agree. I'm intrigued to see how they do as well because they do seem to be trending in the right direction. But as we know, AJ, it can switch up very quickly. Yeah,
they were falling off a cliff. They had 1 year. Let's see if that's who they are now.
Exactly. Moving on, I'll kind of group these two games in together because of the last 7 p.m. matchups of the Tuesday night slate. Mississippi State at Georgia Tech and then Notre Dame at South Carolina. Again, I think when you look at the program statures in the league and kind of their history, I think, again, these four teams, I should say, the matchups with these two make sense. Mississippi State and Georgia Tech, Notre Dame and South Carolina.
Yeah, Mississippi State, Georgia Tech doesn't generate a whole lot of wow factor stuff. But again, it's an opportunity for Georgia Tech to host a Power 5 team in its building and kind of see what the program is. As far as Notre Dame and South Carolina, I think that's really cool. South Carolina gets good support. That place will be full. It'll be a buzz. I mean, they can get it up going for basketball there. So I think anytime Notre Dame hits the road, it's always cool, even in basketball. And they're going to be an interesting team because they have a new coach. Sure. They're going to have a new approach. I'm not sure if they're going to be any good or not, but that'll certainly, I think that the indication that they're playing South Carolina, given how last year went for the Gamecocks, that probably an indication that they're projected to be at the bottom of the league, but it's still an opportunity to steal a road win for the ACC. Okay. And let's remember, Clemson will play South Carolina as well. So yeah, they're all big games.
Yeah. Oh, they are. Yeah. At the end of the day, especially for the league, all these really matter. Moving on, 7:30 slate, only 7:30 p.m. game. Miami at Kentucky. Now that one intrigues me because it's Kentucky. You expect them to be good. Miami coming off a really good year, but have lost some guys. Do they continue their kind of trending upwards? Can they continue that? I think that's an interesting matchup to see.
Yeah. They got Matthew Cleveland,
who,
good point. 2 months, not even 2 months after hitting a buzzer beater to beat them as a Florida State Seminole, then joins the program. I think he's going to be really, really good there. I think Miami's going to be really good. That's going to be an interesting game too, because it's Kentucky. It's on the road. It's an opportunity for Miami to get a massive, massive win that would generate a lot of attention. But if you're just a college basketball guy, well, what on earth does Kentucky look like? Especially that early. I think as Kentucky sort of assembles what it's going to have, having a team like that on the schedule that early in the schedule is probably a little bit scary proposition for some Kentucky fans, or not even that scary, but it'll generate some nervousness. Yeah. But it's also a great opportunity for Kentucky to get a really important win. I think Miami's going to be good this year. Maybe not Final Four good like last year. We talked about them being a Final Four team in late January, early February, when we did a podcast, but they're still going to be really good. So that'll be a fun game.
Agreed. One that every Carolina fan wants to hear about. NC State at Ole Miss, 9 p.m. slate. Another interesting game. I think that's going to be a tough one for the Wolfpack. Yeah. I'm interested to see how they are this year because they did lose some key guys, but did bring in some good freshmen. I think some good transfers as well. So I think that is an interesting matchup, but going to be a tough game, no doubt, at Mississippi.
Well, it's cool because it gives State an opportunity to play an important road game. I don't know what kind of crowd that they'll have at Ole Miss, but you get a chance to go get a road win at a Power Five. That's good, and I do think State had a pretty good haul in the portal, and that's a great opportunity for the Wolfpack. I like to see true road games. I'm
Especially
not a big fan of thousands of these neutral site games. So that's going to be a neat game because I don't remember the last time they played in anything, but certainly in basketball. And so again, I love I kind of wish one year they just have all the ACC go to the SEC and the next year all the SEC go to the ACC. It'd be kind of cool. Yeah, I like watching ACC teams on the road because I think you learn more.
Yeah, agreed. Especially against SEC team, I think it makes more sense in terms of the matchups, and I think it's a little bit more of overall intriguing matchup between ACC and SEC teams than it was in ACC and Big Ten, which we've talked about a lot. Last game on Tuesday, 9:30 tip, Clemson at Alabama. That one surprises me, I think, the most. I thought Alabama would maybe get a little, no disrespect to Clemson, but a little bit tougher of an opponent coming off the year that they had, especially last year, and with some of the guys they have returning and bringing in the following year. So I'm a little bit surprised that maybe that's not a better matchup, because when I look at that game at home for Alabama, I think that's a game everybody kind of expects Alabama to win.
Well, but Clemson did really well in the portal.
Yeah.
Clemson has a chance at being outstanding next season. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's why. I was hearing back in April from some people who have an ear to the ground. I wouldn't say that they're in the know because I don't think anybody was in the know for sure yet, that it was going to be Alabama coming to Chapel Hill. So it's probably good that's not the case because Jaron Stevenson enters the lineup, enters the game, and, I don't think anybody wanted to see that, but this is an awesome opportunity for the Tigers. If the Tigers are going to have a really, really good team, and they got a lot of veteran guys, so they should be able to get it going pretty quickly, even though there's some newness there. That's an opportunity to pick up a statement win and let the basketball world and the ACC know, okay, guys, we're good.
Agreed.
We're gonna make something happen this year, and I think they have the potential to do that.
Yeah, it'll be a statement win for them to start out the season, no doubt about it. Moving on to Wednesday, we'll start with what everybody wants to hear about: Tennessee at North Carolina. That's the game we're obviously here to talk about the most. 7 p.m. tip-off. I like it for a lot of different reasons. I really do. Not only because of the coach, and I'm not going to say his name, that's coming into Chapel Hill that I know has a history with Carolina fans, in particular Dean Smith back in the day. But I know Carolina fans are looking forward to seeing Rick Barnes back in the Smith Center. I'm sure he'll get a great reception when he walks in. But I like the matchup, AJ. We've seen these teams play in the past. A couple years ago, I believe it was it Luke May's senior seasons when they went to Tennessee?
No, it was Tennessee came in the championship year.
Mm-hmm. And they played them at Tennessee.
And then they played them the next year. So
18, yeah.
It was 17-18 because I remember that Sterling Manley and Garrison Brooks played really, really well, splitting time in the post in that win at Tennessee. Mm-hmm. I think they combined I remember what the numbers were, but they played really, really well. And that was the first time that I tried to have a lengthy conversation with Garrison after the game. When he was a freshman, he had like 3-word answers. When he was a senior, he had like 10-word answers.
Yeah,
he got better. But no, I mean, I like Garrison. Garrison was a guy that was never going to BS you, which was always appreciated. But they played really well. That was a great win. Thompson Bowling Arena, phenomenal facility, and that was an awesome atmosphere. So they beat them back-to-back years. The year before, I don't think Joel played.
You might be right about that.
I think Joel missed that game, and it was a close game, and Carolina was able to eke one out. So this is a really good matchup. Tennessee's got a wonderful basketball culture right now with Rick Barnes. I will name him because I'll tell you what, I'm going to stand up for Rick Barnes here for a minute. I get what you're saying, but I remember sitting in the media area in Greensboro in 2009. It was when the weekend that Carolina beat Radford and LSU, but Tennessee was also in there. And the day before, I guess it was the day before the games when they had the media stuff, I think Tennessee played Duke in the other game. Barnes was asked about, you're here with North Carolina, you're back in North Carolina, all the Dean Smith stuff. I mean, it was that building. It was Greensboro, I think, when that happened. And he couldn't have shown more reverence for Dean Smith. And I know people that know him. And I covered where he almost became the NC State coach. Should have become the NC State coach, but Lee Fowler, the AD at NC State, totally screwed that up. Or Barnes would have been NC State's coach instead of Sidney Lowe, and that search would have lasted 5 days instead of 34 days. I was right in the middle of covering that. And he wanted to come back because of the reverence for the league. He's a Lenore Ryan guy. He's all about the ACC and everything. So he had tremendous reverence for Dean Smith and all things Carolina. But he's a very competitive man, and he's a feisty competitive man. So his team will come into the Smith Center with a chip, and they will use that chip to their advantage because that's one of the things that Tennessee has done well under him. Mm-hmm. They play that, they bring a lunch pail out there. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when they have enough finesse, they're able to combine the finesse with the lunch pail stuff. So Carolina will have to come to play. That'll be a cool game. Yeah, Tennessee's going to be good. Mm-hmm. Tennessee's always good under Rick Barnes. Everywhere Rick Barnes goes, his teams win. He's a very, very good coach. So that'll be neat. That Dean Dome ought to be full. It ought to be a buzz. There'll be a lot of optimism about this team. It'll be an early indicator about where they are. They're going to have a lot of those. So they'll be right after the Bahamas trip, I guess. So, yeah, so we're going to find out a lot about the Heels early on. And this game will be one of those examples. And I'm good. And I was told all along they were going to get a home game because they actually I think they play more road games in the ACC Big Ten Challenge than home games. Mm-hmm. And being on the road last year, they were trying to work it out for these ACC teams that they wouldn't have to go 2 years in a row on the road. Plus, Carolina's got games away from Chapel Hill, the 3 I keep saying Maui, in Bahamas. They play Connecticut up to Madison Square Garden. They play Oklahoma and Charlotte. They play UCLA in Atlanta. I think the CBS Sports Classic's in Atlanta, I believe right?
So, yes. I think so this year.
That's a lot. So there's not a whole lot of space left there and a whole lot of room for home games. So they definitely were going to get a home game in this. I thought it was going to be Bama originally, but Tennessee is fine. Tennessee might be a better team than Bama this year.
Yeah, and I think some of the storylines with it's more so. The reason I brought Rick Barnes up is because the first thing I saw on Twitter from people when the news came out was people reposting the picture of Barnes and Smith yelling at each other. So I was like, I gotta bring it up.
You're not wrong. You're not. Look, I'm looking at this, and I know you do too. I'm not saying that you don't.
Yeah,
I looked at this through, a lens of a guy who's impartial covering this stuff, but I get it, but I understand it, and I hope everybody in the building thinks about that. In fact, they ought to run the video, of that just to get people amped up more, just to generate more buzz. I'm okay with that. I like hostility in sports. I think it's
same
good.
way. I think it's great I think it's what makes sports so awesome. So I couldn't agree with you more on that.
So forget what I said, Carolina fans. There's no reverence there, right?
Bring on the heat, man. Bring on the heat.
I happen to like Rick Barnes. I'm okay with him, but you guys can hate all you want. It's just going to make for a more fun night.
Trust me.
Much more entertaining evening for sure.
Yeah, more storylines for us to write about as well too, which is always great. Moving on, Texas A&M at Virginia, another 7:15 p.m. tip-off. Good matchup there at Virginia. I know it's a tough team to beat in Charlottesville. I don't know how good Virginia is going to be necessarily this year. I don't know how good A&M is going to be this year, but talking about some two bigger programs in the leagues, I would say.
Yeah, UVA is going to be good, and Buzz Williams goes back to Charlottesville.
I like that. Oh, that's a good one.
So there's a couple of games where the fans will have some angst for the dude coming in from the SEC, which is good. Mm-hmm. So A&M and Buzz is another really good coach.
Yeah,
he doesn't stick around place too long because he kind of wears out his welcome after a while, and he's a difficult guy to deal with, but. So everyone's told me, I have very limited experience with him. And he told a really good Marquette story one time, the day before Carolina played Marquette in the Sweet 16 back in, 07 maybe? I think it was 07, I think it was. Gosh, I don't know, it was a while ago. This stuff runs together after a while. But that'll be neat, just watching Buzz walk out on the court with his 87-piece suit, sweating up a storm, sweating through a suit, and get some of the hostilities from the UVA folks. But Texas A&M's good. That'll be a good opportunity for UVA to pick up an important win, and the Who's will be good this year.
Yeah, they usually are. And like I said, tough team to beat in Charlottesville, no matter who you are. Florida at Wake Forest, the other 7:15. I like that game. I think that one's interesting. I think Wake Forest, a program that seems to be going in the right track, that, has petered out at times over the last couple of years when it seems like they're starting out really well and kind of even out and maybe even sometimes dip. But I think Florida going to Winston-Salem, that's not a matchup I'd ever thought I'd say. And I think that's going to be an interesting one, maybe just because of that.
Yeah, I know this is going to come across the wrong way a little bit, but, you're going to peter out if you're playing North Dakota State or North Carolina Central a lot and, Bowie State and stuff like that. I'd like to see them play a little better schedule. And I understand that he's got such a new team every year. It takes time. So you have to generate stuff. This is an early opportunity for them to beat a quality program, a program that's kind of hadn't played up to par here for a few years. I think what's most interesting about this game is how many people will be in the building.
Mm-hmm.
I've told you a lot about what it was like when I used to cover Wake, when Chris Paul was there in those days and stuff. And even for the few seasons after that, right on through the Eric Williams era, Joel was great, man. They had a great crowd. There was a buzz. It was an atmosphere that meant something. It's really sucked for a while now. And if that's a game where it's a really important game for Wake's program and for the team next year, and if they go out and take the court with the opening tip and there's 5,000 people in that place, it's not going to help them. It's amazing that support has gone the way it has there. So I would love to see them have a full building, have that place buzzing, give Steve Forbes the support that he needs because he's done a really nice job. He's figuring out a way to keep Wake relevant. They've been relevant. Yeah. Haven't had the huge season. They have petered out, like you said, but playing Wake has mattered. Solid wins. So, and I think he's done a really good job given the circumstances the last few years. So to me, the crowd, the atmosphere, that'll be very interesting that night.
Agreed. Moving on. Duke at Arkansas. Interesting matchup. A little bit surprised maybe awesome. Duke didn't get, I know Arkansas is a decent, solid program for the most part. Maybe a little bit surprised that they didn't get a tougher matchup, but it is in Arkansas. So I think that kind of evens it out a little bit more.
Arkansas has had a lot of success in the tournament the last few years, and historically, it's a very good program. They've won with lots of different coaches there. It wasn't just Nolan Richardson. Eddie Sutton got that thing going in the 70s, and they took them to a Final Four. They've had some amazing players over time. And you want to talk about maybe an underappreciated fan base for basketball and home atmosphere. Arkansas is awesome. And I know that Woo Pig Suey thing is one of the most annoying things on the planet, but it's also kind of cool because if you cover them in a neutral site game or like in an NCAA tournament, their whole section behind the bench, they do it. And imagine 19,000 people doing it at home. And they have a building that I think they built it in the 90s. It's kind of like a little smaller version of the Dean Dome maybe, but it's an awesome atmosphere when they're good. And Duke's going in there. Duke doesn't play true road games unless they're forced to through the challenge. So that is going to be an extremely hot ticket there. And Duke running out of the tunnel. I just wish Kay could walk on the floor. That'd be more interesting. Like totally off the chart. Duke running out of the tunnel one final time when the place is full. It's going to be a spectacle. And I'm looking forward to that.
There'll be a buzz in that arena for sure. Anytime anytime Duke comes to town, it's a different animal altogether. It's just the nature of the beast when you're Duke and when you're North Carolina. Virginia Tech at Auburn is the third to last game of the challenge. Good matchup there as well. I think that one's intriguing for a few different reasons.
Yeah, it is. Kind of wish Virginia Tech would, or I kind of wish that Texas A&M would go to Virginia Tech instead of Virginia.
That would have been even more interesting, with the Buzz Williams connection.
I don't know what to make of the Hokies. And Bruce Pearl's at Auburn. Bruce Pearl's really good. I don't know what Auburn has coming back, but I was in Auburn's arena a year and a half ago, and it's really nice. It's not massive, but it's really nice. So I can't really say much else about that. I don't really know a whole lot about what Auburn's going to have this year. It's just that for the Hokies, it's an opportunity to get a really, really good road win that will help them and help the league. And it's kind of neat. I mean, when else would Virginia Tech visit Auburn in anything?
Yeah, you don't see that very often. You don't associate that.
That's probably the coolest thing about. I mean, Carolina's actually getting the last SEC team, I think, to come into the Dean Dome was Tennessee. I'm trying to think off the top of my head who else has come in the Dean Dome since Tennessee in December of 2016. I don't think anybody has.
I can't think of
No,
anybody. No, Kentucky
no,
hasn't. It's the team
no,
that
because
pops to mind.
they stopped the home and home.
Yeah, it's always a neutral site for them. I wish they'd go home and home more.
They stopped the home and home when the CBS Sports Classic started.
Yeah, I would prefer a home and home with those two teams, but it again, I understand revenue wise why they probably don't do it. But yeah, again, most of these matchups in here are games you're not going to see very often, and it's also really good opportunities for both teams in each league to get important wins. So Georgia at Florida State, the second to last game, and I'll throw this game in there after just for the time purposes and because it's not the most interesting game in the world. Wrapping it up is BC at Vanderbilt. So Georgia at Florida State, then that's a good matchup, and then BC at Vanderbilt. Maybe a little bit less interesting. I know the Stackhouse connection for Carolina fans maybe makes it a little bit more interesting, but no offense to BC, they're probably the team you'd get least excited about in terms of looking at the ACC.
But they're trending in the right way.
They are.
So is
I'll give them
Vandy.
credit. Yeah.
So I think that those are two programs that are trending in the right way and have made some progress. What was the other one?
It was Georgia at Florida State.
Yeah. If Florida State returns to what it was, then that won't be a contest. So
yeah, Georgia's not.
They're both programs that are. I mean, Georgia, I guess, they were really bad a couple of years ago. I think they made a little bit of progress, and Florida State's sort of in disarray right now, which is very unfortunate because it was one of the better programs in the league there for a long time and just suddenly fell off a cliff. So, yeah, I don't think those games are going to get the A+. I don't think you're going to have Billis calling into one of those games.
No, especially a 9:15 kind of wrapping up. Yeah, I don't think those are going to be your big money games in terms of TV revenue. I'll put it that way. But again, I think every matchup on this list is intriguing in its own sort of way, and it's big for the league. And we talk about it all the time with how much the ACC struggles once ACC play starts, and just they don't. And even it seems like the ACC struggles non-conference. You know, there's a lot of kind of weird games during the conference where upsets and stuff like that happen. And then it seems like in the postseason, for whatever, the ACC tends to do good in the tournament. But I've always said, and I'll always stick by it, a lot of people will kind of look at this hindsight things, but like, oh, but look at how the ACC's done the NCAA tournament. I say that's great, but go look at what the non-conference, the record speaks for itself most of the time. It isn't great a lot of the times. And I give credit to the ACC teams for somehow always doing things in the tournament, but doesn't mean the league is always great throughout the year. I think people.
It's been down for a few years.
Yeah.
It's been down for a few years. Some of the people in the ACC, around the ACC, believe that it's going to tick back up because Duke's kind of going into this season a little bit like Carolina last year. I think Carolina's going to be much improved. I think UVA is going to be good. I think Clemson has a chance to be outstanding. And then what's Syracuse in the post-Boeheim era? How quickly does Leonard Hamilton get Florida State back on track, especially at 74 years old?
Sure.
What else does Jim Larrañaga have left in him at Miami? Has he replenished enough? Because they've been pretty good for a while too now. And then you got to look at sort of a fork in the road year maybe at Virginia Tech. They may look to make a change if it doesn't happen there. Tyler Nickel, by the way, at Virginia Tech. Georgia Tech has just been trying to figure things out for a long time, and they're sort of they've become the BC of the South in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
In the ACC. So I think Pitt's going to be really interesting. Notre Dame with a new coach. Louisville's not in this thing, which somebody had to miss, I guess. And again, another program, keep an eye on. I mean, there's so much potential to be really, really good there quickly. But is Kenny Payne the guy? There weren't a lot of indicators last year that would suggest he is, but that was just last year. And it was a really weird season. We'll learn a lot more about them moving forward. But I would like to see the ACC do really well because I want the league games to matter more. I want them to be more competitive. I want them to be more meaningful. And I get sick and tired. I despised having to pay attention to what Ohio State did last year because Carolina's crappy at net record and didn't have a Q1 win. I don't want to do that. That was not fun. I can only imagine what it was like for fans.
Yeah.
Who were hanging on. I mean, if somebody told me, we'll close with this. They were watching Ohio State home game against like Iowa or somebody in late February, and they're on the edge of their seat. because Carolina so desperately needed a quad one win.
Yeah, it can't be fun.
So if the league takes care of business, you don't need to be on the edge of your seat watching the second worst team in the Big Ten play a home game at the end of February, desperately needing them to win.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. That's a great point, Edge. And again, the ACC can do itself some favors if they can come out of this challenge on top. That'll definitely help boost the league because there are some intriguing matchups and a lot of good programs obviously scattered throughout it as well. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, main takeaway, Carolina playing Tennessee at the Smith Center, 7:15 p.m. tip-off on Wednesday, November 29th. I'm sure Carolina fans looking forward to that one and looking forward to the basketball season starting. And I guess it's not too far away now. It'll be here before you know it. Let's put it that way. That's how it all.
Once football comes, all of a sudden you blink and basketball's here.
Then the overlap starts and then your social life is over. So
we have another month for ACC kickoff. So
yeah, it's coming fast, guys. I know this is the dead period of sports. A lot of people like to call it besides baseball, but again, this is probably the worst time of the year in terms of just not as many sports going on. But again, it'll be creeping up soon. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones, another episode of the Tar Heel Illustrated podcast. Appreciate y'all watching. As always, if you're excited about the matchup, if you think, if you're looking forward to seeing Tennessee and the Smith Center, go ahead and like the video below. Let's see how many likes we can get on this one. Make sure you share, make sure you subscribe, and make sure you hit that notification bell as well. See you every single time we upload, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.
Thanks.